before I start the first of these 5 points, if you know my channel, you know I'm always trying to be encouraging, upbeat, but you might find that my last point sounds a bit harsh, and I really denied whether to include it, whether it just, I don't know, sounded a bit mean, but I really thought hard about it, and I thought it's actually a very helpful thing to say, and for people to have the chance to at least listen to and consider for themselves if it applies to them. But we'll start with the first bad habit that I see beginners often having, and that's an over-reliance on pencil if they're drawing with ink, or an over-reliance on erasers if they're drawing with pencil. Because while erasers, if we actually draw with graphite, can be great drawing tools in themselves, we can lay down shaded areas and then take out very thin white lines and create other effects with an eraser. What I'm talking about, of course, is using an eraser and using pencil under drawing as a crutch. Using it because we're scared of making mistakes. Using it because we want to have the option of removing whatever we've just done if we don't think it's good enough. And this is a really unhealthy framework way of thinking to have when we learn to draw. Partly because it keeps taking us backwards. It keeps giving us less drawing on the page. And it gets us fixating on each individual component, as if the drawing was a lot of little separate things on the page, so they each had to be perfect. No, a drawing is the sum total of all the marks and effects that we put on it, that we create in whatever way we do it. It's no one mark. And part of the challenge, part of the joy of learning to draw, is learning to bring a drawing from those first scratchy marks on the paper to a coherent whole that captures something at least that was in our imagination, was in our heart even, when we started to draw it. And the one thing we need to do this is confidence. We need to be able to commit our ink on the paper and push on and trust that in the end we will be able to bring everything together to a happy outcome. And the only way we learn confidence is to actually risk making the mistakes, risk the marks that aren't quite perfect. Learn firstly that that is not a disaster. We don't fall into a great pit without warning if it's not perfect. And that in fact, everything that's not quite right is an opportunity to focus in our next drawing with a clearer picture of what we're trying to do to get closer to what we think, at least at that point, is where we're trying to go. The fear of making a mistake is a huge brake on our drawing improvement, on our drawing progression. It's too easy to apply with too much pressure too quickly, and therefore we're tempted to use it over and over again. We will learn to draw far more smoothly and faster and in a better way if we disconnect the brake and learn to go at a speed that we can control and keep a consistent forward momentum through not just each drawing, but our entire drawing journey. This second point may be perhaps the single largest thing that can really seriously slow down our drawing improvement, and that's overly large, overly ambitious drawing subjects. Over and over again, I see drawing after drawing after drawing that is simply too large on the sheet of paper and too complex in what it's trying to draw. And basically there are problems with virtually every aspect of the drawing. So what's happened is that this person has spent probably hours doing, well, a not very good drawing. And when drawing after drawing after drawing is in this same vein, we can actually start to become so familiar with our results that we fail to see the problems with them. What we need to realize is that if I do a 3-hour drawing that's too large, too ambitious, has lots of problems, and in fact I never really go through it anyway to find out what they are, because I just want to move on to the next one. And we compare that with doing a 20-minute drawing that's far smaller in what it tries to achieve, and it's also far smaller on a smaller sheet of paper. I have more chance both of doing it well, and if I don't do it well, of seeing the problems and having a chance to try again. Repeating something that hasn't quite worked out is a really, really powerful learning strategy. And the other thing, of course, is that if I spend my 3 hours that I have available for drawing doing 9 of these 20-minute drawings rather than one large 3-hour drawing, well, I've multiplied by 9 my opportunities to identify issues, learn from them, overcome them, and repeat the process. What I call go through the learning cycle for drawing. This next bad habit is one I think of as trying to draw with someone else's drawing voice. Trying to draw using someone else's drawing style instead of being inspired by the drawings of other people, and using them not just to inspire us, but to give us the chance to study how they draw, how they create the effects that capture our attention and perhaps our envy, and then to have the opportunity to try and incorporate those into our own drawing style, wherever we're up to at the moment. But I think it's too easy to want to start drawing the same way our favourite artists draw without realising that they didn't start there. They started with whatever their own natural starting point was, and as they worked on issues and as they focused on different things and as they saw what they did and then tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it in drawing after drawing after drawing, their actual marks on the paper with whatever they were using evolved to end up in this place. And that is the drawing learning process for each of us. And we have to let our own drawing voice evolve. And if you have a problem that every drawing you do either looks like 10 different people did a little part each, or every drawing looks like someone else has done it, then that's a pretty good indication that you're trying to grab someone else's drawing voice and you're not trusting that you've got your own voice and that it's worth letting it speak with the pen in your hand on the paper. A baby doesn't say things as well at 6 months as they will at 20. We need to let our drawing voice develop as we practice, as we observe, as we understand, and as we put into practice all of this experience bit by bit, time after time. So trust that you've got a voice, and certainly use other people's works to be inspired and to actually see what different drawing techniques in practice look like and how they create the effects. But then put their work away when we draw ourselves and don't try and cannibalize parts of it, but instead incorporate what we can learn from them into our thinking and let it flow through our hand and become a natural part of our drawing voice. And someone asked, could I let a train go past rather than just cut them all out, edit them all out? So this is what it looks like when a train goes past. Very exciting. This next one may not apply to as many people, but if it does apply, I think it's a really important thing to take control over, and that's stop focusing on merch. Sometimes learning to draw ties in with other things we're wanting to have happen in our lives. And side hustles, well, they're a bit of a thing at the moment, I've noticed. And why not, if we can earn a little income on the side, develop hobbies and abilities that will help us do that. The problem with merchandising is that we can focus on the merchandising before we've really got something to merchandise. We can't do everything well all at once. And merchandising itself is not as easy as it might look, as we might think. Nothing is, in fact. If I'm focused on coffee mugs, cards, postcards, placemats, I'm not going to have the focus on learning to draw. I'll be twisting everything I'm trying to do to look good on a coffee mug instead of having it look good from an art point of view. Once I've got my art to a certain standard, now I can start to play around with it. When I first began painting, I began to line up 5 canvases in a row and paint a very similar subject that used basically the same colours and had very similar composition, and do them all at the same time. And what I finished up with, I discovered, was 5 or 6 very dead, lifeless looking paintings, all of which I was really embarrassed to show anyone. we have to keep our energy and our passion focused in a small area at the start. That will speed up our learning. So what's this final bad habit that I'm worried might sound a bit harsh, a bit pedantic, maybe even a bit personal? It's not my intention, but I'll let you decide. And it's this. I think it's a really bad habit to get into the habit of putting a large, obvious, prominent signature in whatever the most empty corner of our drawing space is. In my experience, the larger the signature, the more problems the artwork has. I think it probably indicates some issues with the whole learning to draw process and understanding what it is, and perhaps appreciating, and perhaps not fully appreciating the level, the standard, the skill that's required in a way that's comparable to other creative learning skills, such as any musical instrument or singing or sporting activities. It's easy to be too easily impressed at the very start, particularly if we're doing this journey on our own and we don't have some independent input, that it locks us into an unhelpful place. Because if I'm impressed with what I've done and don't see the problems, then I'm not developing the awareness of the things I need to be working on, because I don't realize I need to work on them. I've seen so many drawings as well where I would say the signature actually disfigures the overall work. And if I think about it a bit more, the better the artwork is, the more you have to hunt around to find the signature. And when you do find it, it's the marks that make up the signature are often in a very sympathetic match to the overall mark making of this artist's drawing style. Because if I do a drawing, I want it to be about the drawing and not about anything else. And a big Stephen Travers with a big date and a big flourish and scroll work all over the place is going to do nothing but detract from my drawing. So look, I say that with the best of intentions for anyone perhaps who may have a signature that looks like that on every artwork, just to think about. In the end, we all get to make the call, but the energy that goes into that signature, from what I've seen in my experience, could probably be better put into improving our drawing. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Hope you found these 5 things interesting, and look, if any of them are things that you think you need to move on from, why not tell us in the comments, and we can encourage each other to push our energy, our thinking, our habits into areas that will lead to ongoing drawing improvement. But in the end, whatever you do, however you do it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.